buckets. So how many of you, before coming along to Joshua Generation, have had some experience of church? Can you raise your hand? You've been to church before. All right. So if you've been to church before, by raising of hands again, how many of you have heard the story of Daniel and the lion's den? Yeah? Okay. So Daniel and the lion's den is a really cool story. And the reason why when I first heard it, I was like, oh, this is amazing, is because like they teach it in kids' church all the time. So what happens in kids' church is like they usually teach the more exciting stories of the Bible to get kids like hooked on it. And that's one of the more exciting stories in the Bible. I mean, we're going to read it, but this guy Daniel gets put in a pit with lions, and he doesn't die. And so we're gonna look into that story tonight, and we're gonna look at some truths that I felt the Lord saying to me tonight about the story of Daniel and the lion's den. So if you have your Bibles, you can turn to Daniel chapter 6. And I'm going to read the whole chapter, but we're not going to read it all at once. Well, I might not read the whole chapter. We'll see how far we get. So it says this: Darius the Mede decided to divide the kingdom into 120 provinces, and he appointed a high officer to rule over each province. The king also chose Daniel and 2 others as administrators to supervise the high officers and protect the king's interest. So just so you know, what's going on is the king is currently in charge, is a king of a lot of things. Like, it's big. It's not just England, it's like Europe as well. It's like a bit bigger than Europe as well, like in his time. And there wasn't like planes and highways and like good road systems. So like to get from one place to the other took a while. And so the best way for him to manage his kingdom was to actually break it up into 120 provinces. And from those provinces, what he then decided to do is appoint people to be in charge on behalf of him. And then it's not only that, but what he did was he got a bunch of people to administrate those people, to help them do the nitty-gritty work, to help them like make sure all their tax forms were filled in properly and like cross all the T's and dot all the I's. I always get those two mixed up. And so Darius is this king, and he chooses Daniel. And it says, Daniel soon proved himself more capable than all the other administrators and high officers. Because of Daniel's great ability, the king made plans to place him over the entire empire. And so what we see is a man who is being exiled. So Daniel's story is Daniel's from Judah, and Judah, it's one of the tribes of Israel, and it's a geographical location. If you have a paper Bible, if you look in the back and you look at the maps, there's usually quite a few pictures where it says Judah. And that's where he was from, and Darius conquered Judah. And what happens is when you conquer a nation like that, you displace the people. You say, you're going to go over here, and you're going to go over here. And they separate all the influential people, all the powerful people, all the people that when they get together, they can cause a ruckus. And they move them. They separate them all. Bless you. And what they do is they separate Daniel, but Daniel then gets a job working for the king. And he's working for the king that exiled him, that moved him, that displaced him, that more than likely killed people that he knew. And what does Daniel do? We see that Daniel serves this king, and not only serves him, but excels in what he does. And I love verse 4. Then the other administrators and high officers began searching for some fault in the way Daniel was handling government affairs, but they couldn't find anything to criticize or condemn. He was faithful, always responsible, and completely trustworthy. And tonight, that's where I want to start. That we as Christians, that we as followers of Jesus, that we are called to be faithful, always responsible, and completely trustworthy. That's something that when we are those things, when we display those characteristics, things change. I mean, you look at you look at Daniel and what went on with him, and what happened is, I'm just going to do this. What happened with Daniel is his circumstances changed. He was living in his home country, and then all of a sudden, his home country gets conquered. Everything changes. He gets moved to the capital city of the known universe at the time. His circumstances changed, but who he was didn't change. Because God called him to be faithful, always responsible, and completely trustworthy. That didn't matter what environment, what circumstance he was in, the circumstance didn't dictate his identity. What dictated his identity was God. God created him to be this type of man, and he was going to be that type of man wherever he was. That doesn't matter what circumstance you're coming up against, who you are, your identity, who God made you does not change. That when we believe in the circumstance, that the circumstance is bigger than me, is bigger than you, when we believe that the circumstance defines us, that's when life gets messed up. That's when life gets messed up, because we allow circumstance to define our identity, which means no one likes to be around us, because depending on the circumstance, we can be either the best person or the worst person to be around. Have you met people like that? Have you met me on a bad day? Sometimes me on a bad day, I can be woo, and you don't want to be around me. But if you meet me on a good day, everyone wants to be around Chris on a good day. Hopefully. Let's keep on going. Verse 5. So they concluded, these are the other governors, these are the other people, and this is what I'm going to say, that when you walk in your identity, other people get jealous sometimes. Other people get jealous because their identity is dictated off of circumstance. So when you are your identity, who God made you, and other people are being thrown back and forth because everything's always changing, which means they always have to change, they get jealous of you. And all of a sudden they're thinking stuff. They're saying stuff about you behind your back. They might be saying stuff in front of your face. There's opposition immediately, and the opposition's this, is they see and they realize that you're ahead of them, that you know who you are, that you're secure in your identity, and they're not secure. And so the best way to make someone who's secure is not secure is to try and pull them down with you and take them down and say, yeah, we're all going to go down to this level, and we're all going to live here. We're all going to be dictated by circumstance. No one's going to rise above us, because if one person rises above us, that means I have to get rid of my issues. And getting rid of issues is actually pretty easy, but we make it into a hard thing. Verse 5. So they concluded, our only chance of finding grounds for accusing Daniel will be in connection with the rules of his religion. So the administrators and high officers went to the king and said, long live King Darius. I love it when people like, these guys, this is a tip for sucking up. These guys know how to suck up well. I feel I know how to suck up well because I'm a youngest child, and younger siblings tend to know how to suck up very well. So they go in like praising high, like, yeah, we're going to like big you up first, and then we're going to try and get our way with you. And so what it says, long live King Darius. We are all in agreement, we administrators, officials, high officers, advisors, and governors, that the king should make a law that will be strictly enforced. Give orders that for the next 30 days, any person who prays to anyone divine or human except to you, your majesty will be thrown into the den of lions. And now, your majesty issue and sign the law so it cannot be changed. An official law of the Medes and the Persians that cannot be revoked. Medes. When I say Medes, I just think of Ian Mead. And he's not here right now, so it makes me miss him. So we'll say Medes. So this is what happens. That even though Daniel was very good at what he did, jealousy always finds a way to create a pit an opportunity for you to join the jealousy, to join the jealous. It creates a trap. It says, okay, so everything on this platform is fine. You get on this platform, but as soon as you walk over here, oh, we can affect this because this isn't unknown. So if we can have our way in this area when no one's watching, we can create a path and we can make it so that Daniel's going to have to walk into our path. He's going to have to walk into our plan. He's going to have to join us in here. And so what they do is they plead to the king and they say, you are the Lord of Lords. You are the King of Kings. They make the king seem like he's the best. And he's the king. He's in charge of 120 provinces. So it's pretty easy for him to feel that. It's pretty easy for him to feel, ooh, I am the king. And when people are really nice to you, you're like, oh, thank you so much. Like, especially if you're a words person, you like hearing words about you, and everyone's praising you full of words, you're just like, oh, your words tank, your love tank is being filled. Rebecca and I just went on a Keep Your Love On retreat with Danny Silk in London. And so we are keeping our love on at the moment. And they're talking about the love languages. And for people who are words people, for people who like to hear good things about themselves, one of the things that sometimes people can do is they can kind of play to that and they can say, oh, you're amazing. You're so good. You're amazing. Imagine if we made you the most amazing. Wouldn't that be amazing? If we created you to be the most amazing because you're amazing. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to make a law, and whoever doesn't, they might just die. We're going to throw them to the lions. But let's not focus on that. Let's focus on you being amazing. Just for 30 days. It's a law for 30 days. What's going to happen in 30 days? It's one of these laws which just promotes you being amazing. And the king agrees, and he signs up for it. So King Darius signed the law. But this is what I want to talk to you. This is when Daniel really defines himself. But when Daniel learned that the law had been signed, he went home and knelt down as usual in his upstairs room with its windows open towards Jerusalem. He prayed 3 times a day, just as he'd always done, giving thanks to his God. Even in the midst, amongst uncertainty, even though he knew that him praying to God, him being connected, him following the convictions God has placed in his heart, even though he knew that those things directly went against this law that he knew was probably trying to come against him. That when people are jealous about you. That you might not hear what they say, but when they look at you like with a bit of a glare. They give you like the evils. I can't give very good evils. I'm just not that type of person. Like, me and Rebecca will try and do our best parent eyes and I'm just not good. So after a while, I can make my eyeballs really big, but that's about it. But Rebecca, she has the look sometimes, and she looks at me sometimes. She's a nanny, so she works with children. So she has a look, and I'm just like, oh, it brings shivers into me. That I'm just looking at my wife right now, trying not to make eye contact in fear of those. But what happens is this: Daniel, even though he knows doing what he's called to do by his God, even though they found a loophole in his religion, even though they found a loophole in his belief system, and they said, if anyone's found worshiping any other god, divine or human, let's make it plain. So he has no way out. So if we say human, and he says, well, my God's not human, he's divine, then he's out. So let's say divine and human. Let's get him on all fronts. What does he do? The first thing he does is he goes back and he goes straight to God. That in our lives, when we come up against situations and circumstance, when there's uncertainty in our lives, when it feels like life is shaking the ground, like the ground beneath our feet is shaking, when it feels like something's not going right, what happens is we tend to jump, we tend to move, we try and get off of it. Why? Because it's uncomfortable. We tend to act before we hear from God. What does Daniel do? He goes straight to God. He prays. What's prayer? Talking to God. What's talking do? It builds relationship. It builds trust. It builds connection. So he goes straight back to that source where he gets his identity from. Then the officials went together to Daniel's house and found him praying and asking for God's help. So they went straight to the king and reminded him about his law. Did you not sign a law that for the next 30 days, any person who prays to anyone divine or human, except you, your majesty, will be thrown into the lion's den? See, no initial, oh, amazing King Darius anymore. Now they're sticking straight to the law. There's a law that cannot be changed. Like, oh, amazing king, you just signed this. Now what are you going to do? Because if the king goes against it, he won't be king anymore. But the king's own identity is being challenged in that moment. His officials are coming against him and saying, what are you going to do? If you break this, your identity isn't going to be king anymore, and you're not going to be amazing anymore. So what does he do? Yes, the king replied, that decision stands. It's an official law of the Medes and Persians that cannot be revoked. Then they told the king, that man Daniel, one of the captives from Judah, is ignoring you and your law. He still prays to his God 3 times a day. They got detail pretty quickly on him. Hearing this, the king was deeply troubled, and he tried to think of a way to save Daniel. He spent the rest of the day looking for a way to get Daniel out of his predicament. Now, the king spent the rest of the day trying to find a loophole. But this is what he realized at the end. He realized this, that his word, that his declaration, the power of his tongue brought life or death. So in a moment of weakness, in a moment when people were playing to his own pride, his own identity, his own misidentity, where he misplaced it, in a moment of that, when he said yes and signed that decree, what he was doing was he was signing in that one moment death sentences for anyone who went against him, for anyone who prayed against him. The king knew he had the authority to bring life or death. Now, none of us, I think, are kings in the natural realms. Is anyone a king or queen? Rachel Long, there we go. Other than Rachel Long, none of us. This is what Proverbs 18:21 says. The tongue can bring death or life. Those who love to talk will reap what they sow. That as Christians, what we say brings death or life. When we say something negative about somebody, we speak death over them. And when we speak something positive over them, when we encourage them, we speak life. That's that simple. It's that simple. We try and make it complicated, but it's that simple. That the power of our words, the power of our tongue is powerful. Why? Because Jesus gave us the authority that he had. So because Jesus gave us that authority, what that means is what we say matters. But what's the plan of the enemy? What's the plan of the jealous? To get you to think that your voice doesn't matter. To get you to start speaking negatively over people in authority, over people in your life, people who've done things to you, people who go against you, people who actively fight against you. What's the enemy trying to do? He's trying to get you to speak death over them. Why? Because as soon as you speak death over them, he has right to bring death into their life. That we might not think that we have the authority of King Darius. But we have the authority of someone a lot more important than King Darius. We have the authority of Jesus. And the power of our tongue brings life or it brings death. That's why it says this, those who Those who love to talk will reap what they sow. People who love to talk just say whatever, and they don't have a way of processing what they're saying internally. So they just say it, and they talk, and they just like verbally process, and it just comes out. And they go, oh, it's all right. It's just me. And then they move on, and oh. And this is why I realize that in those moments, why it says those who love to talk will reap what they sow, is that I've had to learn in my own life that when I speak over somebody or talk about somebody, it doesn't matter if they're in the room. When I talk about them, I'm giving an opportunity for God to bring life or the devil to bring death. It's a bit quiet, but it's quiet because it cuts. It hurts to realize that when I speak over someone death, when I speak over someone, oh, they're always like that, what I'm doing in that moment is I'm giving the enemy permission to cause that to happen in their life over and over again. That we have authority, and we need to learn to live in that authority. All right. So, we're going to plow through this. In the evening, the men went together to the king and said, Your Majesty, you know that according to the law of the last king of the orders, okay, here we go. So at last the king gave orders for Daniel to be arrested and thrown into the lion's den. The king said to him, May your God, whom you serve so faithfully, rescue you. What did the king just do? He spoke life. He didn't speak death, he spoke life. He's not even a Christian, King Darius. What? He spoke life still. That our words, whether we're in relationship or not in relationship with Jesus, mean something. Why? Because they not only define us, they define people around us. So what we're doing is this, is King Darius makes a statement. May your God, whom you serve, separates himself a bit, serve, who you serve so faithfully, rescue you. Gave him opportunity. So a stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den. The king sealed the stone and his own royal seal, with his own royal seal and the seals of his nobles, so that no one could rescue Daniel. Then the king returned to his palace and spent the night fasting. He refused his usual entertainment and couldn't sleep at all that night. Have you ever made a decision in your life which has caused you a sleepless night? It sucks, doesn't it? Trying to sleep and just you can't get to sleep. Why? Because you have this scenario playing in your head over and over and over and over. And depending on how creative you are, depends on how creative what happens in your head after a while. And you begin to create these pictures and this elaborate story of what's going to happen. I used to be terrified of dinosaurs. I legit thought dinosaurs were real. Why? Because I saw Jurassic Park and it terrified me. Like the velociraptors, scary. Like, how many people have seen Jurassic Park? Raise your hands. Okay, thank you. For those who haven't seen it, go see it. The scene when the boy and the girl are in the kitchen and they're hiding and they're like shaking and shivering and the velociraptors are walking down the aisle. Oh, it gets me to this day, even though I know what's going to happen, even though I know the kids don't die. When I watch it, what am I thinking? My imagination is going, oh, he's going to get them now. That King Darius had a moment, just like you and I, just where we made a decision, we said something, a situation's happened to us, and all we can do is think about that. All we can do is replay it in our head. All we can do is imagine what we could have done better. Very early the next morning, The king got up and hurried out to the lion's den. When he got there, he called out in anguish, "Daniel, servant of the living God, was your God whom you serve so faithfully able to rescue you from the lions?" Daniel answered, "Long live the king. My God has sent his angels to shut the lions' mouths so they would not hurt me. For I have been found innocent in his sight, and I have not wronged you, your majesty." The king was overjoyed and ordered that Daniel be lifted from the den. Not a scratch was found on him, for he had trusted in his God. The truth will always set you free. It does. That we believe, I don't know where we get it, but we believe that when we trust in a lie, when we put our faith in death, when we put our faith in a lie, when we put that there, we think, oh, we have to manipulate just like everyone else so we stay safe. And when everyone else is manipulating and lying and trying to push for position and fight for position, fight for authority, fight for favor, to try and be the coolest person, to try and have the best things, what happens is this. When you stay true to who God made you, when your identity is solely in him, it doesn't matter what you come against. The truth will set you free. I was just with, so we were just at this Danny Silk thing in London, and this is one of the things he said straight away. That he said, perfect love casts out all, and then we all said, fear. And he goes this, so love displaces fear, but he said, fear also displaces love. That when we connect with fear, it displaces that love which we can have. So why do we choose to displace love when we can displace fear? Why do we not choose to connect with that love which displaces the fear? And this is, it just like, when he said that, I was like, oh, it just got me. He said it like this. He's quite a funny guy, and he said he uses humor a lot, so everyone's laughing. Like, it's a whole weekend, and you're talking about like relationships and boundaries, and like children, if you have children, and like just how you relate to people, how you communicate with people, how you keep your love on. And he was saying that he uses humor because it's an anesthetic. So people are laughing and they don't realize that like they're cut, and like God's just like completely like removed this like lump which shouldn't be there, and you're just like, oh no, where'd it go? And then he makes you laugh again, and it honestly worked. It was great. This is what I'll talk about. We've all been faced with a situation when we feel like we've been put in a lion's den. We've all had something where we felt like this is our lion's den. It may have been something small for you. It may not have been as big as that, like a physical, you've been put in a lion's den. But it could have felt like it. There could have been fear all around you. There could have been uncertainty. There could have been darkness in front of you, and you couldn't see a single thing. And then you're just like, I don't know, but I have to go that way. And you walk, and you just feel like you're stuck. You feel like you only have to go that way. But you have two choices. You have two choices. The first is to accept the inevitable and get eaten by the lion. Or the second is just to sleep alongside the lions. They're not going to bother you because your faith is in God. They have no authority, they have no power. Why? Because you chose to accept and believe and trust in Jesus. And when you trust in Jesus, the lions in that den aren't bad lions, but they're good. They're with you. They represent authority and power that you can have. They represent bravery and confidence. They represent Jesus himself. They represent that you're more than a conqueror. That when you decide that your identity isn't going to be found in circumstance, but it's going to be found in him, when you align yourself to that, when you speak life over your friends, your family, when you speak life over your enemies, when you speak life over the people that really hurt you, you align yourself with authority, with power, with bravery, with confidence. You align yourself to be more than a conqueror. But when you give in to death, and those lions' mouths aren't shut, and they take a big bite, you align yourself with intimidation, with deceit, with anger. You align yourself with a devourer, with someone who's going to try and eat you, who's going to try and kill you, who's going to try and take from you. But it's our choice. We don't have to be intimidated by a lie. The fundamental truth about a lie is it's not true. What if someone so if I said to you that Rebecca has brown hair, and that's truth, it's not truth. Why? Because she has ginger hair. Ish. Ginger-ish. Strawberry blonde, but definitely ginger when you're a kid. I've seen pictures. Thank you for applauding gingers. But this is the truth. Truth is this, that you have an option in every circumstance. You have an option in every den of your life. You have an option when you feel like you're being put into a den and you don't know what's going to happen, and the lies around you and the fear that is trying to come in and knocking on the door saying, as soon as you go in there, as soon as we put the rock on top and it's just you and the lions, you're done. Or we, the faithful, we, the people that put our trust in God, we, the people that without doubt always follow truth, always follow Jesus. We don't place our identity in the uncertainties of life. We place our identities in Him. When we do that, what we become is even more powerful than the lions. We become people who are conquerors, who are brave, who are confident, who realize that Christ is more powerful than any circumstance that this world has to offer. And tonight, I want you guys to know this, that I believe in you, that you guys honestly are amazing. And I'm just not saying it to make you feel good about yourself so I can try and sneak something in. I'm saying it because I know who God made you. Why? Because I asked Him during worship, did you make this person? Yeah. So, oh, okay. Did you make Edith? Yeah, I did. Oh, okay. Did you make Tim Rudge? Yep. I made all the Rudges. That was legitimately the conversation me and God had. But this is the truth. The truth is that your identity was never supposed to be in circumstances, never supposed to be in scenario, never supposed to be defined by the things around you. It's always defined by the Father. It's always defined by the person who created you. It's always defined by the one who is always there, who never sleeps, who is always watching, who created the heavens and the earth, who is in Himself perfect love. That's the guy who made you. And when you align yourself to that, things change. You got confidence on your side. You got Jesus on your side. You have bravery on your side. So it doesn't matter what situation you're going to go into, even if you don't know what's going to happen, you trust in God. Why? Because He is always with you. He is always for you. And truth always bubbles to the surface. The truth will always come up. It doesn't matter what you try and hide, what you try and lie about, the truth will always come up. Why? Because I've tried to hide some things in my life. I've hidden them pretty well. And guess what? They come up. It just happens. But all we have to do is give God those things and realize that those things, those lies, those things that we've done that are wrong, the things we've done that are good, all those things, we can just give all that to God. We can give ourselves to God, and we can just say, God, have your way. I want to be defined not as someone who is deceitful and lies, but this is what I love. And this is my heart for every single one of you right now, that you would be known as faithful, that you would be known as always responsible, and that you'd be known as completely trustworthy. That those three things, what they do for Daniel, they positioned him. They were about to position him in a position which was a lot bigger than he'd ever imagined. Why? Because people recognize faithfulness. People recognize people who have good responsibility, and people recognize someone who's truthful, trustworthy. So if you guys want to stand up with me. And band, if you'd like to go back onto the stage. What I want to do is this. I feel like tonight we need to know who we are in God. We need to know that we are sons, that we are daughters. We need to know that it doesn't matter what is going on around us, that doesn't define us, but what God said about us is what defines us. That our words mean something. That the power of the tongue brings life or death. That as we speak out truth, as we speak things, they take shape, they take form. And so this is what I want to do.